Hey guys, Sam from Manfa's Makes. Happy Saturday! So, welcome back to all my returners and hi to any newbies. If you are new here on a Saturday and a Sunday, I read you stories from this book here, which is Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. There is a whole playlist on my channel should you wish to listen to the stories that we have already read. And I also read The Wizard of Oz, and that has its own separate playlist as well. To my returners, I am so sorry I didn't read stories last weekend. I just needed a couple of days R&R. We have had a lot going on behind the scenes, and I just needed to take a little bit of a chill break. In the end, I still didn't get that chill break that I needed, but hey, a girl can try, right? So, if you are ready, we will jump straight in and I will do my best to read 3 stories today. Now, the first one is super short, but the other 2 are fairly long. So, please make sure you are comfortable. Please make sure you have a drink. If not, pause. I will wait for you and then we can listen together and get some time in on your projects, guys. This is the perfect opportunity. I know quite a few of you like to listen as you're crocheting or knitting away. And that is absolutely perfect and the main reason why I do this. Oh, and also, I apologise for being in my pyjamas. I am filming this in an evening. I have been to work, I have had my shower, and I really couldn't face getting dressed again. So I apologise for being in my pyjamas. But hey, if it was a bedtime story, we'd be in our pyjamas anyway, right? Right? Okay, so the first story today is The Fox and the Geese, and it is story 86. The fox once came to a meadow in which was a flock of fine fat geese, at which he smiled and said, "I come in the nick of time. You are sitting together quite beautifully, so that I can eat you up one after the other." The geese cackled with terror, sprang up and began to wail and beg piteously for their lives. But the fox would listen to nothing and said, "There is no mercy to be had. You must die." At length one of them took heart and said, "If we poor geese are to give up our vigorous young lives, show us the only possible favour and allow us one more prayer, that we may not die in our sins, and then we will place ourselves in a row so that you can pick yourself out the fattest." "Yes," said the fox, "that is reasonable and a pious request. Pray away, I will wait till you are done." Then the first began a good long prayer, forever saying, "Ga, ga," and as she would make no end, the second did not wait until her turn came, but began also, "Ga, ga." The third and fourth followed her, and soon they were all cackling together. When they have done praying, the story shall be continued further, but at present they are still praying without stopping. And that's the first story, guys. Just remember, these stories can be a little dark and a little grim. I am literally just reading you the words from the page. I am just reading it how the author has written it. And obviously time has progressed since these stories were written. They were written a very long time ago, and so therefore some opinions and themes may differ to what we think and believe today. And I am not saying that I am in agreement with anything other than reading the stories from the pages for you. Okay, so the next one is story 87, and it is The Poor Man and the Rich Man. In olden times, when the Lord himself still used to walk about on this earth among men, it once happened that he was tired and overtaken by the darkness before he could reach an inn. Now there stood on the road before him 2 houses facing each other, the one large and beautiful, the other small and poor. The large one belonged to a rich man, and the small one to a poor man. Then the Lord thought, "I shall be no burden to the rich man, I will stay the night with him." When the rich man heard someone knocking at his door, he opened the window and asked the stranger what he wanted. The Lord answered, "I only ask for a night's lodging." Then the rich man looked at the traveller from head to foot, and as the Lord was wearing common clothes and did not look like one who had much money in his pocket, he shook his head and said, "No, I cannot take you in. My rooms are full of herbs and seeds, and if I were to lodge everyone who knocked at my door, I might very soon go begging myself. Go somewhere else for a lodging." And with this he shut down the window and left the Lord standing there. So the Lord turned his back on the rich man and went across to the small house and knocked. He had barely done so when the poor man opened the little door and bade the traveller come in. "Pass the night with me, it is already dark," said he. "You cannot go any further tonight." This pleased the Lord, and he went in. The poor man's wife shook hands with him and welcomed him, and said he was to make himself at home and put up with what they had. They had not much to offer him, but what they had they would give him with all their hearts. Then she put the potatoes on the fire, and while they were boiling she milked the goat, that they might have a little milk with them. When the cloth was laid, the Lord sat down with the man and his wife, and he enjoyed their coarse food, for there were happy faces at the table. When they had had their supper and it was bedtime, the woman called her husband apart and said, "Dear husband, let us make up a bed of straw for ourselves tonight, and then the poor traveller can sleep in our bed and have a good rest, for he has been walking the whole day through, and that makes one weary." "With all my heart," he answered, "I will go and offer it to him." And he went to the stranger and invited him, if he had no objection, to sleep in their bed and rest his limbs properly. But the Lord was unwilling to take the bed from the two old folks. However, they would not be satisfied until at length he did it and lay down in the bed, while they themselves lay on some straw on the ground. Next morning they got up before daybreak and made as good a breakfast as they could for the guest. When the sun shone in through the little window and the Lord had got up, he again ate with them and then prepared to set out on his journey. But as he was standing at the door, he turned round and said, "As you are so kind and good, you may wish 3 things for yourselves, and I will grant them." Then the man said, "What else should I wish for but eternal happiness, and that we too, as long as we live, may be healthy and have every day our daily bread? For the 3rd wish, I do not know what to have." And the Lord said to him, "Will you wish for a new house instead of this old one?" "Oh yes," said the man, "if I can have that too, I should like it very much." And the Lord fulfilled his wish, and changed their old house into a new one, again gave them his blessing, and went on. The sun was high when the rich man got up and leaned out of his window and saw, on the opposite side of the way, a new clean-looking house with red tiles and bright windows where the old hut used to be. He was very much astonished and called his wife and said to her, "Tell me, what can have happened? Last night there was a miserable little hut standing there, and today there is a beautiful new house. Run over and see how that has come to pass." So his wife went and asked the poor man, and he said to her, "Yesterday evening a traveller came here and asked for a night's lodging, and this morning when he took leave of us he granted us 3 wishes, eternal happiness, health during this life, and our daily bread as well, and besides this a beautiful new house instead of our old hut." When the rich man's wife heard this, she ran back in haste and told her husband how it had happened. The man said, "I could tear myself to pieces if I had but known that. That traveller came to our house too and wanted to sleep here, and I sent him away." "Quick," said his wife, "get on your horse. You can still catch the man up, and then you must ask to have 3 wishes granted to you." The rich man followed the good counsel and galloped away on his horse, and soon caught up with the Lord. He spoke to him softly and pleasantly, and begged him not to take it amiss that he had not let him in directly. He was looking for the front door key, and in the meantime the stranger had gone away. If he returned the same way, he must come and stay with him. "Yes," said the Lord, "if I ever come back again, I will do so." Then the rich man asked if might not wish for 3 things too, as his neighbour had done. "Yes," said the Lord, he might, but it would not be to his advantage, and he had better not wish for anything. But the rich man thought that he could easily ask for something which would add to his happiness, if he only knew that it would be granted. So the Lord said to him, "Ride home then, and 3 wishes which you shall form shall be fulfilled." The rich man had now gained what he wanted, so he rode home and began to consider what he should wish for. As he was thus thinking, he let the bridle fall, and the horse began to caper about, so that he was continually disturbed in his meditations, and could not collect his thoughts at all. He patted its neck and said, "Gently, Lisa," but the horse only began new tricks. Then at last he was angry, and cried quite impatiently, "I wish your neck was broken." As soon as he had said the words, down the horse fell on the ground, and there it lay dead and never moved again. And thus was his first wish fulfilled. As he was miserly by nature, he did not like to leave the harness lying there, so he cut it off and put it on his back, and now he had to go on foot. "I still have 2 wishes left," said he, and comforted himself with that thought. And now as he was walking slowly through the sand, and the sun was burning hot at midday, he grew quite hot-tempered and angry. The saddle hurt his back, and he had not yet any idea what to wish for. "If I were to wish for all the riches and treasures in the world," said he to himself, "I should still think of all kinds of other things later on. I know that beforehand. But I will manage so that there is nothing at all left for me to wish for afterwards." Then he sighed and said, "Ah, if I were but that Bavarian peasant, who likewise had 3 wishes granted to him, and knew quite well what to do, and in the first place wished for a great deal of beer, and in the second for as much beer as he was able to drink, and in the third for a barrel of beer into the bargain. Many a time he thought he had found it, but then it seemed to him to be, after all, too little. Then it came into his mind what an easy life his wife had, for she stayed at home in a cool room and enjoyed herself. This really did vex him, and before he was aware, he said, "I just wish she was sitting there on this saddle and could not get off it, instead of my having to drag it along on my back." And as the last word was spoken, the saddle disappeared from his back, and he saw that his second wish had been fulfilled. Then he really did feel warm. He began to run and wanted to be quite alone in his own room at home to think of something really large for his last wish. But when he arrived there and opened the parlour door, he saw his wife sitting in the middle of the room on the saddle, crying and complaining, and quite unable to get off it. So he said, "Do bear it, and I will wish for all the riches on earth for you, only stay where you are." She, however, called him a fool, and said, "What good will all the riches on earth do me if I am to sit on this saddle? You have wished me on it, so you must help me off." So whether he liked it or not, he was forced to let his third wish be that she should be free of the saddle and able to get off it, and immediately the wish was fulfilled. So he got nothing by it but vexation, trouble, abuse, and the loss of his horse. But the poor people lived happily, quietly, and piously until their happy death. There we go. Okay, so the last story for today is story 88, and it is called The Singing Springing Lark. There was once a man who was about to set out on a long journey, and on parting he asked his 3 daughters what he should bring back with him for them. The eldest wished for pearls, the second wished for diamonds, but the third said, "Dear father, I should like a singing, soaring lark." The father said, "Yes, if I can get it, you shall have it," kissed all 3 and set out. Now when the time had come for him to be on his way home again, he had brought pearls and diamonds for the 2 eldest, but he had sought everywhere in vain for a singing, soaring lark for the youngest, and he was very unhappy about it, for she was his favourite child. Then his road lay through a forest, and in the middle of it was a splendid castle, and near the castle stood a tree, but quite on the top of the tree he saw a singing, soaring lark. "Aha, you come just at the right moment," he said, quite delighted, and called to his servant to climb up and catch the little creature. But as he approached the tree, a lion leapt from beneath it, shook himself, and roared till the leaves on the trees trembled. "He who tries to steal my singing, soaring lark," he cried, "I will devour." Then the man said, "I did not know that the bird belonged to you. I will make amends for the wrong I have done, and ransom myself with a large sum of money, only spare my life." The lion said, "Nothing can save you unless you will promise to give me for my own what first meets you on your return home, and if you will do that, I will grant you your life, and you shall have the bird for your daughter into the bargain." But the man hesitated and said, "That might be my youngest daughter. She loves me best and always runs to meet me on my return home." The servant, however, was terrified and said, "Why should your daughter be the very one to meet you? It might as easily be a cat or dog." Then the man allowed himself to be persuaded, took the singing, soaring lark, and promised to give the lion whatever should first meet him on his return home. When he reached home and entered his house, the first who met him was no other than his youngest and dearest daughter, who came running up, kissed and embraced him, and when she saw that he had brought with him a singing, soaring lark, she was beside herself with joy. The father, however, could not rejoice, but began to weep and said, "My dearest child, I have bought the little bird dear. In return for it, I have been obliged to promise you to a savage lion, and when he has you, he will tear you in pieces and devour you." And he told her all, just as it had happened, and begged her not to go there, come what might. But she consoled him and said, "Dearest father, indeed your promise must be fulfilled. I will go there and soften the lion, so that I may return to you safely." Next morning she had the road pointed out to her, took leave, and went fearlessly out into the forest. The lion, however, was an enchanted prince, and was by day a lion, and all his people were lions with him, but in the night they resumed their natural human shapes. On her arrival she was kindly received and led into the castle. When night came, the lion turned into a handsome man, and their wedding was celebrated with great magnificence. They lived happily together, remained awake at night, and slept in the daytime. One day he came and said, "Tomorrow there is a feast in your father's house, because your eldest sister is to be married, and if you are inclined to go there, my lion shall take you." She said yes, I should very much like to see my father again, and went there accompanied by the lions. There was great joy when she arrived, for they had all believed that she had been torn in pieces by the lion and had long ceased to live. But she told them what a handsome husband she had, and how well off she was, remained with them while the wedding feast lasted, and then went back again to the forest. When the second daughter was about to be married, and she was again invited to the wedding, she said to the lion, "This time I will not be alone, you must come with me." The lion, however, said that it was too dangerous for him, for if a ray from a burning candle fell on him, he would be changed into a dove, and for 7 long years would have to fly about with the doves. She said, "Ah, but do come with me, I will take great care of you and guard you from all light." So they went away together and took with them their little child as well. She had a chamber built there so strong and thick that no ray could pierce through it. In this he was to shut himself up when the candles were lit for the wedding feast. But the door was made of green wood, which warped and left a little crack which no one had noticed. The wedding was celebrated with magnificence, but when the procession with all its candles and torches came back from church and passed by this apartment, a ray about the breadth of a hair fell on the king's son, and when this ray touched him he was transformed in an instant, and when she came in and looked for him she did not see him, but a white dove was sitting there. The dove said to her, "For 7 years I must fly about the world, but at every 7th step that you take I will let fall a drop of red blood and a white feather, and these will show you the way, and if you follow the trace you can release me." Thereupon the dove flew out at the door, and she followed him, and at every 7th step a red drop of blood and a little white feather fell down and showed her the way. So she went continually further and further in the wide world, never looking about her or resting, and the 7 years were almost past. Then she rejoiced and thought that they would soon be delivered, and yet they were so far from it. Once when they were thus moving onwards, no little feather and no drop of red blood fell, and when she raised her eyes the dove had disappeared. And as she thought to herself, "In this no man can help you," she climbed up to the sun and said to him, "You shine into every crevice and over every peak. Have you not seen a white dove flying?" "No," said the sun, "I have seen none, but I present you with a casket. Open it when you are in sorest need." Then she thanked the sun and went on until evening came and the moon appeared. She then asked her, "You shine the whole night through, and on every field and forest. Have you not seen a white dove flying?" "No," said the moon, "I have seen no dove, but here I give you an egg. Break it when you are in great need." She thanked the moon and went on until the night wind came up and blew on her. Then she said to it, "You blow over every tree and under every leaf. Have you not seen a white dove flying?" "No," said the night wind, "I have seen none, but I will ask the 3 other winds, perhaps they have seen it." The east wind and the west wind came and had seen nothing, but the south wind said, "I have seen the white dove. It has flown to the Red Sea, where it has become a lion again, for the 7 years are over, and the lion is there fighting with a dragon. The dragon, however, is an enchanted princess." The night wind then said to her, "I will advise you. Go to the Red Sea, on the right bank are some tall reeds. Count them, break off the 11th, and strike the dragon with it. Then the lion will be able to subdue it, and both will then regain their human form. After that, look round, and you will see the griffin which is by the Red Sea. Swing yourself with your beloved onto its back, and the bird will carry you over the sea to your own home. Here is a nut for you. When you are above the centre of the sea, let the nut fall. It will immediately shoot up, and a tall nut tree will grow out of the water on which the griffin may rest. For if he cannot rest, he will not be strong enough to carry you across, and if you forget to throw down the nut, he will let you fall into the sea." Then she went there and found everything as the night wind had said. She counted the reeds by the sea and cut off the 11th, struck the dragon with it, whereupon the lion overcame it, and immediately both of them regained their human shapes. But when the princess, who had before been the dragon, was delivered from enchantment, she took the youth by the arm, seated herself on the griffin, and carried him off with her. There stood the poor maiden who had wandered so far and was again forsaken. She sat down and cried, but at last she took courage and said, "Still I will go as far as the wind blows, and as long as the cock crows, until I find him." And she went forth by long, long roads until at last she came to the castle where both of them were living together. There she heard that soon a feast was to be held, in which they would celebrate their wedding. But she said, "God still helps me," and opened the casket that the sun had given her. A dress lay inside, as brilliant as the sun itself, so she took it out and put it on, and went up into the castle, and everyone, even the bride herself, looked at her with astonishment. The dress pleased the bride so well that she thought it might do for her wedding dress, and asked if it was for sale. Not for money or land, answered she, but for flesh and blood. The bride asked her what she meant by that, so she said, "Let me sleep a night in the chamber where the bridegroom sleeps." The bride would not, yet wanted very much to have the dress. At last she consented, but the page was to give the prince a sleeping potion. When it was night, therefore, and the youth was already asleep, she was led into the chamber. She seated herself on the bed and said, "I have followed after you for 7 years. I have been to the sun and the moon and the 4 winds, and have inquired for you and have helped you against the dragon. Will you then quite forget me?" But the prince slept so soundly that it only seemed to him as if the wind were whistling outside in the fir trees. When day broke, she was led out again, and had to give up the golden dress. And as even that had been of no avail, she was sad, went out into a meadow, sat down there and wept. While she was sitting there, she thought of the egg which the moon had given her. She opened it, and there came out a clucking hen with 12 chickens, all of gold, and they ran about chirping, and crept again under the old winged hen. Nothing more beautiful was ever seen in the world. Then she arose and drove them through the meadow before her, until the bride looked out of the window. The little chickens pleased her so much that she immediately came down and asked if they were for sale. "Not for money or land, but for flesh and blood. Let me sleep another night in the chamber where the bridegroom sleeps." The bride said yes, intending to cheat her as on the former evening. But when the prince went to bed, he asked the page what the murmuring and rustling in the night had been. At this the page told all, that he had been forced to give him a sleeping potion because a poor girl had slept secretly in the chamber, and that he was to give him another that night. The prince said, "Pour out the potion by the bedside." At night she was again led in, and when she began to relate how ill all had fared with her, he immediately recognized his beloved wife by her voice, sprang up and cried, "Now I really am released. I have been as it were in a dream, for the strange princess has bewitched me so that I have been compelled to forget you, but God has delivered me from the spell at the right time." Then they both left the castle secretly in the night, for they feared the father of the princess, who was a sorcerer, and they seated themselves on the griffin which bore them across the Red Sea, and when they were in the middle of it, she let the nut fall. Immediately a tall nut tree grew up, on which the bird rested, and then carried them home, where they found their child, who had grown tall and beautiful, and they lived happily until their death. So there we have it, guys. Those are the 3 stories for today. I hope you enjoyed them. Please do look forward to more stories tomorrow. I am just going to have a quick look ahead and see what is coming. I don't know whether it will be 2 or 3 stories tomorrow because they are quite lengthy ones, but we will see what we can do. I am going to hop off here now. I am actually filming this on Friday evening for you, ready for tomorrow, and I do believe my dinner is ready. So I am going to go and enjoy my dinner. I am then going to come back on and film Sunday stories, so I will be in the same pyjamas as I'm filming both on the same day. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I hope you get a lot of good crafting time in. And yeah, let's get ready to start another week at Manfa's Makes on Monday, shall we? So guys, until then, stay safe, be kind, look after one another, get some good quality time in with your loved ones, and get some good quality crafting time in. I will see you in the next one, or around the YouTube streets. Happy Saturday and have a great weekend. Love you guys.